All right, what's going on, guys? Check it out. Today we've got my girl Rebecca Clements on. She's also on Instagram, known as at Simply Whimsical. She's a complete badass. This girl has been vegan since she was 12 years old, and her family was not plant based. Today she's gonna go into telling you a little bit about her story, her background in training, going from gymnastics, dance, playing sports, doing CrossFit, Olympic lifting, and then actually getting into competitive bodybuilding. She is a baller. We're also going to get into how she creates a routine, things that you can do to establish a foundation, a strong base in plant based living. Okay, so here's the big problem. You want to live plant based and excel at your health and performance. You're looking for real ways to change your life and the world by reducing your footprint. How do we continue to perform in every facet of our lives and do it without eating meat and following the format that's been force fed to us our entire lives? And do it on your own terms through a plant-based diet? That's the real question, and I'll give you those answers and more. I'm Marcus Watts, and welcome to the Vegan Transition. All right, awesome. So I'm recording now. But yeah, really, Rebecca, I just would love for you to just tell me how you what made you even interested in going plant-based, because especially coming from the CrossFit community, I had two gyms and I helped open a CrossFit before I had my gym. That's not a conversation, you know what I'm saying, in CrossFit at all. So how did you, just what was your journey, how did you find plants?
Yeah, so I had started really young, and I think I just got it. And I'll come back to that in a second. But moving into like the CrossFit world or just the very competitive athletic world and lifting in general, I think because I was so young when I started that I had made the decision, and my decision was I am doing this. I am all in. I will not have any animal product come into my system. And I think making that choice was so important because when that choice was made, it made it easier to make other choices. So when I entered my first CrossFit gym, and there's supplements on the wall, all whey protein, or you have people bringing in their chicken and rice and telling you that you need to eat more eggs. And for me, I never had to convince myself, oh, wait, should I be doing these other things? Rather, my question was, well, I had made the decision. And then after that, my question was, how am I going to make this work? So it wasn't looking to whatever the newest supplement was on the wall or hearing what other people were eating for breakfast. I knew that I was going to continue my life without having animals in it. And how am I going to do it? What's the next step? And because I didn't have those answers yet, and I kept asking myself those questions, I kept getting more answers. And then when I got those answers, I had 1,000 other questions. And then that spiral just kept going to where here I am 15 years later. I haven't eaten an animal in over a decade. I feel better than I ever have in my entire life. And I have more answers than I thought I could ever possibly need. I'm not done asking questions. I will forever ask questions, but it all started really young. And if there was one story or one moment, I remember that I declared it. And I think this is where the decision happened. It was after like a soccer game or something as a kid, and we were in the car and we had gotten pizza. We stopped somewhere to get pizza to go. And in the back, everyone opens up the pizza and is so excited to eat it. And I looked down at the pizza and I still remember this crystal clear. And I saw pepperoni and I thought, oh my gosh, that came from an animal. That was a creature, that pepperoni, that's flesh. And I picked off my pepperoni. And my mom was driving the car and she turned around, she said, what are you doing? How come you're picking that off? And in that moment, I said, I don't want to eat animal. And I still ate the cheese, not fully. I wasn't at the level of vegan and full awareness that I am now. But that's how it started. And then I realized, well, what else has flesh on it? I would have picked those out too.
So
It's
so
also
hold
a
on.
long-winded answer of how it started.
No. So how old were you when that happened?
I think around 12, maybe a little bit younger.
Wow.
I had ever since I was really young, never wanted red meat. I thought there's blood on the plate, and I just connected. It looks bloody. Why would we eat that? And not to blame, shame, or call out my family because my
Yeah, yeah,
parents
yeah.
have done so well with me for what resources they had. But my father cuts meat for a living. We grew up, we had a butcher block in the middle of our kitchen. We had a big jerky smoker in the garage, and people would hunt where I was from. It was a huge part of the culture. I was not fully supported. I never had support besides myself. So that's why I had to continue to keep asking these questions to learn more, because I want to help others not have to feel the way I felt. I felt unsupported. I felt alone. And now it is my life mission to help other people transition smoothly without having to go through as much of the journey that, it's taken me 15 years to understand what I do now.
Yo, that is see, like stories like yours are the reason, I was telling you before how I don't do like templated questions out for this, right? Because how could I possibly template a question that gets you to tell that story in that fashion? Like Rebecca, I'm
Right.
mind blown right now. Okay, so since you were 12, so you got to explain, because one of the biggest problems that people deal with are being adults and navigating this lifestyle that is it's just against the grain. I mean, you and I know, like even like though you weren't doing paleo, when paleo first came out, when using blocks for your nutrition came out, it was seen as like this like negative thing, like, oh, it's not really Paleolithic and you can't perform, you know what I mean? And people had to
Hmm.
navigate those conversations, and then it came more mainstream, you know what I mean? I think that that's kind of how I've seen plant-based living be. And again, you've been doing it way longer than me, so you can probably appreciate even more. I mean, for me, it's just been navigating since 2014, where it was like you couldn't find any information, nobody knew anything, everybody was pretty much sure that you were going to die. But you know what I'm saying? But being 12 years old, how did you navigate? Okay, I'm committed to doing this. Something in your heart was telling you that. But like, not only can you not like, is there nobody else to support you, but you can't even buy your own foods? Were you cooking for yourself? Like, how did this go?
Yeah, so I think the reason I was as successful as I was, and not that it was all easy, and I had plenty of failures to learn from. That being said, since I had my why, and now I can frame it a little better, I can understand the process around the why and what it was. But at the time, I didn't have language to describe it, but I knew this one thing. I knew I was going to live my life without hurting other creatures. And I believed so fully, and still I do to this day, that that's possible. I believe that everyone, and this is me throwing my beliefs on everyone, but we should all have that end goal of do as little harm as possible when we're here on this earth. We want to help everyone. We want to do better. We want to provide for our kids. But overall, all that comes down to the pure essence of it is do no harm, do less harm. So I knew that even if things were really, really hard, and it was. I remember when I was young, I will never forget this day either. My dad, when I told him, hey, I'm not going to eat animal anymore, he looked me in the eyes and he laughed and he's like, you're on your own. And that was it. It was my parents saying, we're not going to cook for you because we don't understand this. We can't connect to this. And instead of me just giving up, I thought back to that essence, what my why was. I don't want to do harm. Okay, I know that. I believe that. So how am I going to make this work without doing harm? So anytime if my mother went to go get groceries and go grocery shopping, I would tag along and I'd make sure I was always there. Once I was old enough that I could drive, I would always drive myself to the grocery store. I would
Okay.
spend the time and the energy looking up every single aisle, reading every
Mm.
label, seeing, trying out new things. Um, it was not easy, but knowing why I was doing it made it so I could keep doing it even when that support wasn't there.
Man, all right. So, I mean, doing my research on you and seeing, the different modalities of training that you do, um, I think you need to explain to people your training journey, your current training style, some of your accolades and things that you've done. Because obviously after this, if you guys haven't, you'll go and check out her Instagram. But she is an absolute machine. You're in phenomenal conditioning, but you're like a master of like none, but of all. You know what I mean? You really have
The
a
jack
wide
of all
range of
trades,
skills.
master of none.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So. Like, can you please, so tell us, let's kind of go into your training journey or your just fitness journey. You know, how did you, obviously you're playing soccer, so you're an athlete. But how did you transition, and what did that look like for you going into these different things that you've done? Just kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, in my adult life, the first most competitive sport I started doing was CrossFit. And I grew up dancing and doing gymnastics, and I taught dance for over 10 years. I love it. It was a beautiful world to come from. And what that has taught me is proprioception and just understanding my body well, which allowed me to do well in CrossFit. I picked it up pretty quickly, which is, if you don't know, it's a sport of fitness with a bunch of different modalities, things from endurance to intervals to like the faster pace workout. There's Olympic weightlifting and gymnastics, which was just right up my alley because it was a ton of new skills to learn, and
Gotcha.
I loved it. I drank the I drank the CrossFit Kool-Aid and was
Yes.
absolutely in love with every part of it. I had even moved. I'm from Michigan originally. I moved across the country to Arizona to train CrossFit at a certain gym. Since then, I had a little bit of a hip injuries going on, and decided to step back from the as intensive training as I was doing, focused more on only Olympic weightlifting, which felt a lot better on my hips. I could still do it. I was really loving it. However, again, the injury was still there. Finally got it taken care of, and I have hip surgery scheduled for next week. So I'm having a double hip surgery, having a few labrums repaired. So I should be brand new after. So I'm
Right.
excited. I'm actually legitimately excited to have a bilateral hip surgery in a week. Uh, but so since when I realized I did have to have surgery, got on the books to schedule it, we decided that I might as well put these muscles to use before I atrophy a little bit from surgery. So I entered my first bodybuilding show, and I competed in figure category. This was a show that I just finished Saturday. So it's brand new. It's a wonderful time. I got second, and I qualified for nationals. So I've been dipped my hand in a lot of fitness buckets, and each one I think has prepared me even better for the next one that I've done. I think I would really like to stick with bodybuilding and figure shows for a little bit. I had a lot of fun, and that's something I could see myself doing more of. When I recover fully from surgery, I will also be getting back into Olympic weightlifting because the snatch and the clean and jerk, if you haven't done them before, they are incredible lifts to do. They're so technical. You can
Yes,
get
they are.
nitty gritty with them, and they stand the test of time. The bar is always going to be the bar, and the way you move it, it's always going to respond a certain way. So it's a really fun sport.
Man, that's awesome. So let me ask you, as you're when you started getting deep into, I mean, it's even more interesting because I was watching one of the videos where you were talking about, being on the rings, doing circles on the rings and stuff like that. And then when you finished the video, I saw you do that little dance, and I was like, oh no, she definitely has way more skills than I've even been able to kind of pick up. So navigating gymnastics, even, because I mean, for those of you guys that don't know, I'll tell you what, I'll let you tell about what the training was like for gymnastics, especially when you're doing it from a young age.
Yeah, so when I did gymnastics growing up, it was tumbling only. So I had done a little bit of the four events when I was really young, but had transitioned to just dancing and only doing tumbling and floor gymnastics as a way to be more competitive in dance. If you can throw in those tricks in a dance
Okay.
and look graceful. So I didn't have as much work on the typical format, like the bar beams, what people think
Okay,
of as
yeah.
pure gymnastics.
Because it's
That being
rigorous.
said,
Like the amount of training
oh, it
is
is.
insane.
Yes, and I've worked with coaching like kids in the four events, but then otherwise I coached tumbling to kids for a long time, and even adults, especially in the CrossFit world. So I'm a CrossFit coach. Um, I do personalized programming online for people now. But when I do, I'll do specialty courses of gymnastics classes inside of gyms. And when I do those, it's really fun to do gymnastics with adults that aren't super familiar with anything gymnastics. But teaching kids for as long as I did made it such an easy carryover to working with adults. Because
Mm,
if you can explain to a 5-year-old child I need you to move your leg up this way, facing this direction, while breathing this way, holding your arm up, whatever it is. That makes it a little bit more simple that when I go to adults, I can kind of cue them the same way because to them, they are kind of a 5-year-old in that moment that they're being exposed to movements they've never done before. So gymnastics as a whole, no matter what, if anyone's listening to this, and that's a little tip to take away, is start with the basics. No matter what, master the basics. Back to beat, just strict pull-ups, just strict dips, just doing, a certain like a V-up sit-up, the hollow holds, hollow rocks, any sort of the basic fundamental gymnastics, like core work, full body stuff, do that and do it very, very well. Because if you look at who's the very best, whether that's doing gymnastics in CrossFit, gymnastics on the Olympic level gymnastics team, or just someone doing gymnastics at their house in their garage because they love it, no matter what level they are at, everyone is still doing some parts of the basics. And the more they do the basics, the faster they get better.
Yeah, man. So let me ask you this. How have you, well, I guess this question is probably better to ask first. What was the hardest part of navigating your nutrition along with your goals? Because, when you're just playing sport, and then when you're doing your dance, and then when you're going into CrossFit, you know, eh, competing at a high level, and then going into, the bodybuilding side, all those required completely different energy expenditures, and your intake, besides just your total daily intake changing, like, the way that your macros and stuff are set up, your fats, your carbs, and your proteins for the goal that you're after have to change. Because like in the bodybuilding side, obviously it's like aesthetics. And then in the CrossFit side, it's and health overall, like no matter what, guys, like we're saying health is priority overall. But then
Mm-hmm.
um in the CrossFit side, you're just trying to perform as good as, as well as you possibly can. And at the same time, of course, you're trying to keep the best, aesthetics as well, but it's kind of like secondary. So like, how did you navigate, you know, figuring out your nutrition? Like, have you worked with coaches like mainly, or if you did, obviously for your show you did, but like, just how have you kind of done that and gone about like figuring out like what works best for you? Number one is as far as your caloric intake. And then number two, like how you're going to get your, what I'm saying, nutrients and stuff and do it being plant-based.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've never really worked with a nutrition coach. I have done I've done something very well. And before I say that, I like to think to myself that I have not peaked yet. I'm not even close to peaking. One thing I've done very well over the last 5, 10, 15 years is I've been developing a very solid base. And this is a baseline behavioral pattern, habits, way of thinking, just the base essence of who I am and what I will accept or what I do. I think I've been building brick by brick very well. And that is leading to where I get to experience and do all the things I do at a higher level. So, nutrition, one thing that I've done over the past however many years is be very consistent and stick to
Mm,
principles. So I have never been someone that has tried a ton of different diets just to try the diet or because I think paleo is going to help this week or pescatarian or whatever. It's never even necessarily been about the label or the name for me. Yes, I am vegan and I'm a huge proponent of everything that comes with veganism, but it's not the inherent diet I was chasing for some end goal. It was that I knew I wanted to do less harm, and veganism is a lifestyle. It's a term for a plant-based way of living by doing less harm. So by sticking to sort of principles, um, things like chewing my food slowly, as long as you do that, you're going to have better digestion. So whatever you are eating, your body's going to absorb more of it. It's the things like I eat consistently at the same times every day. I wake up and go to bed at the same time. So my circadian rhythm allows for better digestion and better recovery. That being said, knowing where my baseline is has allowed me to play with variables depending on the sport I'm doing. So, for instance, CrossFit, yes, you're in all sorts of different energy systems. CrossFit took the energy system chart and put it up in a blender and it says, here, drink this. Like, it is no joke. So when I was full-time CrossFitting, so 6 days a week, at least 2 sessions a day, each session about 90 minutes to 2 hours. So you're looking at, 3 to 4.5 hours of training a day. I was eating 3,000 calories a day.
Hold
I
on. Please
tracked
tell people how
everything I
much.
ate.
Please tell people how much you tell people how much you weigh, please.
I weigh right now probably 142 to 145 pounds, and I am 5'6", sometimes 5'7", depending on what doctor you go to.
And the reason
So
I ask
a
you that,
lot.
yeah. So thank you for sharing, because I mean, a lot of women, I figured that it was okay to ask you to do that, but a lot of women, it's not a comfortable thing. But the reason I ask you to say that is because you got to hear what she said. She's talking about the volume, right, of training or exercising, sweating, whatever you want to call it, right, that she was doing. And she's saying that she had to fuel her body properly. And when you look at her, like, she looks like she's eating and doing the right things. But I just think that a lot of people have the misunderstanding that less is more. You know what I'm saying? And they don't understand the
Hmm.
energy expenditure, and that, hey, listen, if you're putting out this much energy, you've got to take this much in, or else you're just going to be, feeding on yourself. But vice versa, if you're just if you're like moderately exercising for 30 or 45 minutes a day, and then you're eating 3,000 calories, like, there's going to be a problem.
Right. And what's interesting is with all of the nutrition clients I've worked with for however many years, not once have I ever had someone come to me who is eating too much. I've
Yeah,
never seen food loss
never,
and energy
never.
expenditure. And I have someone, oh, you actually were going to bump down your calories. What it always is, and most of the time, is people coming in saying, hey, I do want to lose a little bit of extra weight. I do want to have better performance. What do I need to do? And every time it ends up being, when I really dig into their history, where they're at, what their needs are, it is that, hey, we're going to bump up your calories for the next 4 weeks and see how you adjust. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. You're telling me that I came to you to lose weight and you're trying to get me to eat more? And it's, yes, that is exactly what I'm doing. But while we do that, I don't just say eat more. It's, while we do that, let's clean up the sources of the foods you are eating. So we go through and we upgrade here and there and there. And you all know, 200 grams of let's say a peanut butter with palm oil and sugar in it, which, watch your peanut butter labels, most of them have those. Those 200 calories are going to be much, much different in your body than if we give you 200 calories of measured out macadamia nuts, or like 1 tablespoon of peanut butter, whatever that works out for that individual. But also cleaning up the sources makes a big difference. So I have gotten the pleasure of being able to sort of just bump up my calories or lower them, and not have to do a ton with changing my ratios of my macros as I've adjusted to things, because the fuel sources are cleaner. So the more plants you eat, the more your body is going to absorb it and love it. 2 cups of spinach is always 2 cups of spinach. Your body is going to take that and say, yes, please, thank you, I'd love some more. Versus, you have 2 donuts and it's not the same
Right.
response. So keeping the food clean is sort of like a competitive advantage. Being able to stay lean but still have energy and still train as hard as I do and I have has definitely been because of veganism. That's been a little like a hack, a performance hack.
Yeah. This is always a fun conversation, because it's always like, people, whenever the clean eating conversation comes up, I think that people they don't fully understand, because, hey, listen, yes, like, a calorie is a calorie, like a carb is a carb, 1 gram of fat is going to be a gram. But what we're talking about and we're going to dig into this a little bit more when we start talking about the consistency in her routine and her timing of her eating. But what she's talking about is the nutrient dense foods, because that's the thing about a plant-based diet. You know, in 2013, I went down with, 2 blood clots and a pulmonary embolism, and I was out. I couldn't train for 16 months. And then when I came back, I had been experimenting with plants. And the thing was, my recovery time was faster. Like, all my lifts went up. It was easier to get like my calories in, and like I just noticed my body responding better. And that's because of what you're talking about. Some of those things were removed. You know what I'm saying? When you start removing all the processed foods and the fake sugars and things like that, now it's, your body doesn't have to work so hard to process that and put it to good use. And other things too is one thing that I think people should speak a lot more about is paying attention to your body, which is like the main thing that I'm getting from you. Like some people can eat soy. I don't know if you can eat soy, right? Some people can eat soy
Hmm.
and like they don't have any response to it. Other people, like they can't even have like a cup of, frozen fruit or something like that because the amount of sugar that's in it is too much and their body just doesn't respond to it. So I love you talking about these things that you've figured out. And it sounds like once you found something that worked for you, you were like, okay, these foods awesome and these times awesome. And you just kind of kept on repeating. It was just like rinse and repeat the same thing over and over. And then you just kept getting results. You spoke a little bit about timing of eating. Can you talk about how you do that and why it's so important? Because this is something I speak about with my clients too. It's like removing, the thought process for your body and building that routine.
Yeah. So even before food timing, sleep timing. If you're eating consistently at certain times, but you're not sleeping at consistent times, you're not getting the full benefit that you would if you were doing both. So once you are aligned, and the goal I give my clients between 30 and 60 minutes, you should be waking up and going to bed at the exact same time every day. So you wake up at 6 a.m. and your bedtime is 10 p.m. You have a 30-minute or 60-minute window at the most, um, either way. And that helps keep your circadian rhythm in check and everything running a lot smoother. So your body doesn't have to think, what am I going to do next? Is this workout going to kill me? I don't know if I'm going to get adequate sleep tonight. Okay, let me store all this energy as fat instead of using it and burning it as a clean fuel. So check off sleep, boom. Now you've earned the right. And in my world with my clients, now you've earned the right to look at your food timing. Okay, let's look at your food timing. For myself, if I get done with a workout, I'm eating a first meal within 30 to 60 minutes at the latest. There's lots of good research for that. Um, I love protein shakes sometimes. However, this entire prep that I just did, it didn't work out with my meals. So I've gotten out of the habit of drinking a protein shake after workout, but that's always an option, easy option for people. I prefer a real meal right now. So that will be right away a meal with carbs and protein. After right now, I'm doing primarily weightlifting and strength training, a little bit of dynamic stuff and like more like kind of circuit training, but not a ton. Sort of think of like functional bodybuilding or bodybuilding mixed in with a little bit of CrossFit here and there.
Right.
And with that kind of training, when I get done, I respond best, and this is sort of the general protocol, with like a protein and carb. You don't need a ton of fat after workout. That's not going to fuel you. Your body's burning itself up. It says, hey, I want some carbs, I want some protein. So I'll usually get in a real meal within 30 minutes, and I always feel really good with that. Um, Food timing, otherwise, breakfast, I give myself about an hour, maybe 2 hours before I have my first meal. That allows my body to wake up. I do a little apple cider vinegar morning routine with some water and fresh lemon and lime squeeze in there. Sip on that, let my body kind of wake up. And then once I finally get that first hunger signal in the morning, that's when I'll start eating. But because I've been so consistent, that is pretty much at the same time every day. So it's a little bit into some food timing.
I like it. When you've noticed yourself not having that consistency or your clients, what are some things that you'll find will start happening?
The mental narrative changes.
Mm.
So, the first thing people might think of, that was a great question, is what physical changes are you seeing? What are you feeling in your body? But what I notice the most with myself and my clients is that the mindset starts to change.
Mm.
So you no longer feel as empowered. You realize you're off schedule in your body. You kind of get that weird feeling in your gut, like, oh, like I should be doing something else right now, or this doesn't totally feel right. And then we ignore that intuition saying, hey, like, go take a nap. Hey, put down the phone for a little bit and like cook dinner and smell the smells and feel what it feels like to stir, or go plant a little garden box in your backyard, whatever it is. When you keep shutting out that intuitive feeling, your brain knows. So you start to have thoughts that may not be as nice. Things like, oh, like you do that again, you skipped your meal, oh, you forgot your lunchbox at home, like why do we even bother to prepare the meals? Or whatever negative self narrative you start to catch yourself in,
Hmm.
That is the biggest thing that happens. So if anyone listening can identify with that, or they start to get hard on themselves, or they're like, what's the point? Or they decide, oh, you know what, I am just going to go out and get fast food for lunch really quick because I forgot my lunchbox. Oh, well, I'll do better tomorrow. If you start getting in those stories,
Hmm.
stop yourself right there and use that as a check to turn your brain off for a second. Feel into your body. This might sound a little hippy dippy woo woo, but listen to your body. It knows the mind body connection is a real thing. So listen to your intuition and be honest with yourself. Ask those harder questions. Is what I'm doing aligned with what my goals are? No, I said I had a goal to be able to run a sub 6 minute mile, or I want to be able to finish that half marathon. Going and getting Taco Bell on my lunch break is not going to help me. I feel this way because I'm out of my routine. Okay. I'm still talking to myself here. Okay. I can manage this. Let's just get back to our routine and let's just do what we can right now. And that will set people up for success. That mindset shift and just being able to call yourself out will help tremendously.
Hmm. I love it, man. I love the mindset because it's such a healthy approach to it, and not a negative one that I think most people have. I mean, if you were 12 years old and you started navigating, you know what I'm saying, all this without all the crazy foods and stuff that we have out in options and blogs and websites and stuff, I think the rest of us, kind of have no excuse to just be positive about it and continue to give it a try. Um,
Yeah. And to piggyback off of that, people who may be listening who think this is hard, like I do not have support, I want you to know that every nutrition client I've worked with, especially those who worked with transitioning to veganism or plant based, the number one thing that is hardest for everybody is not the food. It is not the concepts. It is not the idea or the essence of what it is that is underlying plant based. The biggest struggle that anyone I have worked with has is the social aspect. And
hmm,
that is, how do I get my coworker Sue from accounting down the road to stop, making comments about what I bring for lunch? Or my kids keep having these kind of school lunches. What should I do about this? Or, my husband is not on board with it. He still wants steak. Or my all my friends just love to go out and drink and get wings afterwards, and I don't want to go out and get wings. It's like those moments, that's the hardest part. And what stops people there is not the actual food or the wings or the plate of whatever's in front of them. That's not the issue. It's the issue of being mentally tough enough and being so secure and understanding of your why, of why you're doing this, whether it's for yourself, for the animals, for the world, for your health, to show up as a better lover, parent, whatever it is. If you're not crystal clear on that and you get in those situations where you have that peer pressure, you have that social challenge, that's the hard part. So it's not the food. When you give someone a beautiful plate of vegan food with like a cashew dip and tempeh roasted with all the veggies and all the spices,
oh
whatever
yeah.
the dish is, you can, if no one's going to eat that and say, oh, this is gross, I want something dead and rotting. No, what it is like just the mental narrative that that person has. But wait, doesn't this go against my culture? But wait, my parents ate this. But wait, I don't know any other way. So it is that mental shift. It's not the food.
Yeah, I love it. Such a great approach. All right. So this is the part where we kind of give people some, some takeaways. So if you guys don't already, grab out your pen and paper. So Becca, I want to ask you, you spoke a little bit about building that foundation. So if people want to start to develop a strong base, right, in their plant-based lifestyle, what are some things that they can do? Because I think you already mentioned some really good things about what people that are already doing it can do. But say someone is really struggling or they've kind of gone back and forth. They want to build that foundation. They want to build that base that you spoke of. What are some things that you recommend?
The first thing that comes to mind is to make the unsexy things really sexy.
Mm,
And here's an example of that. So habits aren't always that sexy. Something like brushing your teeth in the morning and before you go to bed. That's something our culture has agreed upon, we all do, and that's a shared value to keep clean teeth and prevent heart disease and have fresh breath. So when you go to kiss your lover, it tastes good. And so we can connect to that. So we've made brushing our teeth part of regular everyday life. So if you have things that you're not currently doing in your everyday life that you know you want to be because it'll serve you, you need to make it sexy. You need to figure out what is it about doing this one particular habit that is going to help you? How does it help? And when you make those connections, then it becomes simpler. So an example that's tangible. Hey, I know I should be drinking, a good rule of thumb is about a half your body weight in ounces of water a day.
Yep.
So if I weigh 150 pounds, that's about 75 ounces of water. It's a good rule of thumb. If you're even more athletic and doing even more, drink even more. But that's good rule. So if you're like, oh my goodness, I'm not even close to that, and you go through your days, but you're not actually drinking more water, what you can do is make it sexy. So here's some ideas. You can connect to it so much so that you realize drinking more water is going to give me more health and vitality. I'm going to recover better. I'm going to move faster. How exciting that is. And anytime you aren't drinking water, you can just start to ramp yourself up by thinking about all of the great things that come from consistently drinking your water. You can go out and buy the most beautiful water bottle you've ever seen in your whole life.
Yeah.
Another tip for that too is I'll tell my people a lot of what they call hydro flask, like those big water bottles. Get a big water bottle and then have a top that flips open. So you don't want a water bottle top that screws and unscrews because your barrier of entry from you getting to the water just increased exponentially. But if you have a flip top and you're sitting there on your computer at work, or you're on your phone, or you're in the car, and you casually reach over, boom, with one finger, you flip the top open, and then you start sipping your half your body weight of ounces of water, you have just made something that you weren't doing before. That's a really solid basic habit. You just made it more sexy, more fun, more accessible. The barrier of entry is lower, and
Mhm.
therefore you're going to do that habit more frequently. So it's picking out all of that, bringing it back, is picking out a couple habits that you know will benefit you. Um, for instance, warming up. Not everyone warms up enough. Maybe you want to start spending at least 5 minutes doing some sort of dynamic stretching or movement or mobility piece before you get into your training session. So you want to set a timer on your phone. Boom, you have 5 minutes. Just do that 5 minutes, get in and get out. You don't need to make it some big, crazy, all right, I'm going to start doing 20 minutes a day every day. It's taking,
Gotcha.
hey, I just want to warm up a little bit better. And you make that a small little habit and make it fun and get really good at it. And then once you've gotten so good at it, it's just part of your repertoire. It is like brushing your teeth. You know that when you go into the gym, the first thing you do is you fill up your water bottle, you do your 5 minutes with the timer on your phone, and then you get to lift your heavy weights, do that. So master the basics, make them sexy if they're not sexy to you, and just sip your water.
I love it. Man. No, so listen, tell people where they can check you out, please. Where they can, what's your website, what's your Instagram, Facebook, please let them know.
My Instagram at simply underscore whimsical. Underscore is like that little line at the bottom. And website RC for Rebecca Clements, onlinecoaching.com. And the website and Instagram, there's links there for everything else you could possibly need.
Man. So thank you so much for your time. Really. I think you shared like some really great stuff that people can definitely take away and use. And I like hearing your approach to it more than anything, because you can tell with people like you can tell that it's based in a lot of trial and error, and you've kind of found that happy place for you. And once you find that place where you're getting those results, it's so much easier for you to just stick with it and just own it.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you for having me. It's nice to have conversations with fellow vegan powerhouses.
Yes, for sure. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I hope to chat with you soon.
Hey guys, Marcus here. Listen, I'm so appreciative of you guys coming and checking out the podcast. Thank you so much for taking your time to listen. And If you know someone that this would help, please share this podcast with them. Help us to reach as many people as possible and make a serious impact. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you get alerted when every new episode releases.